Well, welcome to the Community Development Committee, March 21st edition. We'll start out by introducing ourselves and who we represent.
Sean Anderson, District 2, represent part of St. Joseph Township and part of Somerset Township.
Ryan Shirley, District 13, and represent part of the city of Richmond.
Jerry Van Zomeren, I represent District 18, and that's pretty much the village of Baldwin and a little bit out north about to the Pine Lake area.
Scott Counter, represent for District 11, which is most of Star Prairie Township, a sliver of New Richmond area, and the village of Star Prairie.
My name is Dan Hansen, and I'm District 12, and I'll represent the rest of New Richmond.
I'm Jason Cheesit, Community Development Director.
Ken Witt, County Administrator.
John Hilgers, Planner, Community Development Department.
Julie Peterson, Community Development Department.
All right. First on our agenda is approval for the minutes of Thursday, February 15. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns? Then let's just let those stand as approved. And we'll move right into our public hearing, opening public hearing for, oh, yeah, okay, public comment. Is there anybody in the audience? Well, sure. Yeah. Step up to the podium, say who you are and where you live. I'm going to guess. Let me just guess. It's Kim Dupree.
Very good. Kim Dupree, Marina in St. Croix, Minnesota. But I do extensive work with the folks over here concerning water quality. Just wanted to give you a quick update from when I was here last month. Emerald Sky Dairy, we got confirmation from both county and DNR that they have been purchased by the Breeze Dairy Group in eastern Wisconsin. And so anyway, they have Ridge Breeze Dairy down in Pierce County that is currently permitted with a Vanguard Renewables digester. And so I wanted to bring tonight the folks that I've been working with in Wapaka, Wisconsin. They've done a lot of digging. One of them's a PhD researcher, and she came up with their non-compliance, their violations in Massachusetts and Vermont. We've got 52 of them in the last 3 years. And some of these are very concerning because they're like hydrogen sulfide being in excess of 500 parts per million, which can kill humans very quickly. That happened about 4 times. There was some very close calls around the 400 mark. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention because Emerald Sky Dairy does have a biogas allotment in their permit from 2001. So I wanted you to be aware of this. Maybe get out ahead of it. Might be a good idea. And then I'll just give you a quick update about Lynn Township in Wapaka. I went and spoke there at their public hearing on February 28th. The township denied the digester there in Lynn Township in Wapaka County. They based that off of the truck traffic it was going to generate, the herd size of the dairy. The zoning changes were going to be intensive industrial. And they have other parts in the township that are zoned for that and didn't feel that putting an island in the middle of the township would be a good idea long-term. That was their rationale because they have the utilities and stuff set up in other parts of the township for those types of facilities. They were worried about the pipeline standards. They were worried about the flaring off of the gas that doesn't get shipped out. They were very concerned about the first responder stuff because a lot of these stacks are a lot higher than what the ladders are for the fire trucks. So they were very concerned about that as well. And again, they didn't want anything in the middle of the township. So they denied that, I guess because they're under county zoning. This might go before their whole county board. So it's not over quite yet, but I just wanted to give you that update. That's what's going on. And that Vanguard company is the same one that is the same one working with the Breeze Group that might end up at Emerald Sky. So that's my update. I'll let you know when we know more. Thanks.
Thank you, Kim. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak for public comment? All right. Then let's start this public hearing concerning rezoning in the town of Ogali for Erickson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. The public hearing tonight is for a rezoning application by the Bruce and Jane Erickson Living Trust. This is in the town of Ogali. It's a 47-acre parcel. We'll get to a location map in just a minute. The current zoning is Ag 1 agricultural. The applicant is seeking an R2 residential zoning district. The application specifies that the intention is to obtain the R2 zoning designation for this 47-acre parcel, which would align it with other properties that the trust owns along 30th Avenue just to the southeast of the subject parcel. As a reminder for committee members, the current Ag 1 zoning district allows agricultural uses and limited residential development with a density of 1 dwelling unit per 40 acres. Under the R2 zoning district, most agricultural uses would be allowed, except major livestock facilities, ag entertainment, and biopower and manure processing uses. The R2 zoning district would allow major subdivisions, which in the town of Ogali would be 2-acre lot minimums. It is not the intention of the applicant to do any development at this time. Again, it is to align this parcel with other parcels that are owned by the trust. Next, just taking a look at some of the general location maps. The 47-acre parcel outlined in blue at the tip of the arrow lies south of County N and south of I-94 in the town of Ogali. And then zooming in just a little bit farther, you'll see 230th Avenue along the west side of the parcel. The general area is comprised of farmed areas, which are cropped. You'll see scattered woodland areas. You'll see some intermittent streams that kind of bisect the property. And then we have a livestock facility just to the southwest along 230th Avenue. General features of the property, taking a quick look at the zoning map. You'll see in the town of Ogali, they do support a number of different zoning districts we'll talk about in just a minute with the comprehensive plan. But the subject parcel outlined in blue is currently zoned Ag 1, surrounded by various zoning districts, agricultural zoning districts, and the R1 and R2 categories. Next, we take a look at the town of Ogali comprehensive plan. In accordance with state statute, rezoning requirements or rezoning applications must be consistent with state statute. So taking a look at the town of Ogali future land use map from their comprehensive plan, you'll see the subject property outlined in red. Again, this is from the town of Ogali plan. You'll see the areas in white would support Ag 1 and Ag 2 zoning districts, along with residential, the R1 and R2 districts. The town of Ogali, while they do support agricultural activity in their town, they also support the ability for owners to subdivide their property for residential development. The town also supports the C2 zoning district in this white area. And again, that would be a zoning that would allow ag entertainment uses, not the subject of this rezoning application. Town of Ogali future land use summary, a couple policies they reference from their comprehensive plan is to create a balance between residential and commercial growth along with their ag production, and also promoting economic growth, but retain the rural character of the town. Next, we take a quick look at the county comprehensive plan. County policy has been to match and reflect the comprehensive plans of the local towns. So for this reason, the county comprehensive plan designates this property as mixed rural agriculture. You can see from this designation that it includes farmland, scattered open lands, wooded areas, ag-related uses, cottage industries, and limited low-density residential. So from that aspect, the county future land use map would also be consistent with the rezoning application. The designation in the county comp plan would support Ag 1, Ag 2, R1 or R2 residential. Next, we'll take a quick look at the natural resource map. The map on the screen shows that the property is included within an environmental corridor along the south and east edge. And as mentioned earlier, that corresponds to some intermittent streams that run through the property that are more active after heavier precipitation events. You'll see from the diagram up above, part of the property to the southeast is within a shoreland overlay district, which is regulated by the county. These are areas within 1,000 feet of a navigable water, shown by this pond in the very lower corner, within 1,000 feet. The property is also included within a floodplain overlay district, which kind of follows one of the intermittent streams. The county does have regulations that oversee short development in the shoreland. They're regulated by Chapter 16, and that establishes setbacks, impervious area limits, land disturbance, and buffer vegetation requirements if and when this property would ever get developed. Chapter 18 floodplain outlines the use of property having to comply with elevated structure requirements and limits on grading and filling. Next, we take a look at productive farmland. You'll see that some of the property does indicate soils that are considered prime agriculture, but if you look at the remainder of the property, we have some areas of steep slopes in the middle and also some areas of gravel and sand deposits. So while some of this property is considered prime agriculture, about half of it does not meet that requirement based on our soil mapping layers. Next, we take a look at the agency review. The town of O'Galley reviewed this request at their February 12th, 2024 meeting, and the town board recommended approval of the rezoning application. Following that, we have our technical review findings outlining 1 through 4, referencing town policies and the request not being in conflict with the county resource management plan or Chapter 15 zoning. We also cite having to be consistent with the comprehensive plans of both the town and the county. Again, we talked about natural resource management plan, zoning ordinance. Another criteria is that the town has not disapproved the request and that the rezoning and use is consistent with the comp plan. It does not result in spot zoning, which it does not. Next, taking a look at the staff recommendation and findings. Based on our review and the town consideration of the request, we would recommend approval of the rezoning of the 47 acres to the R2 district based on the technical review findings. Number 2, the future land use plan maps of both the town and county comp plans support the rezoning request, that the town board has recommended approval of the request, and that the proposed use is consistent with and can comply with Chapter 15 zoning. And then with all requests coming out of the ag districts, we have to reference in our findings a number of answers to questions about the land being better suited for a use not allowed in the farmland preservation district, that the rezoning is consistent with the applicable comprehensive plan, that the rezoning is substantially consistent with the county certified farmland preservation plan, and that the rezoning will not impair or limit agricultural uses surrounding this parcel of land, which it will not. As of 4:30 today, we have not received any public comments from the public notice that was sent to abutting owners and published in the local paper. That concludes the overview of this request.
Thanks, John. I'll ask if there's anybody from the public who'd like to comment, either in favor or opposed to this rezoning. All right, seeing none, does the committee have any questions for John? I will close the public hearing, move into business item number 1. And at this time, I would look for a motion.
I make a motion that we grant this rezoning to Bruce Urchin.
Very good. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Now, is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's put her to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Wonderful. Let's move on to business item number 2. We have a presentation from Washington County, Minnesota, Land and Water. June, come on up and introduce yourself.
That's good, thank you. Good afternoon, County Supervisors. I'm June Mathowitz, resident of New Richmond, here to present to you today an overview of a working model of a land and water legacy program. I note that I'm not here representing Washington County, but they have seen this presentation and they're fine with me giving this presentation to you tonight. I did work with the program for the last 10 years. So I am intimately familiar with the details and the operations of all of it, and I really think that there are quite a number of people that would be in support of doing this kind of thing here. It is really good long-term planning, and we know that it's really difficult to do long-term planning sometimes in local government, but this really helps move it along, and it also helps generate the enthusiasm and bring the support forward for protection of water resources, especially in the county. As residents insist more be done to protect the water they drink and the valued natural features in the county, including the nationally treasured St. Croix River, this model is offered as an important planning and implementation opportunity that also provides a practical, flexible, and functional approach to water protection. This program can be seamlessly replicated, adapted, and incorporated into the county's work here. It is an attractive program around which everyone can unite and rally because what it will do is as good for residents and the environment as it is for business. For the next few minutes, we'll provide a brief overview of neighboring Washington County's Land and Water Legacy Program as the potential model. The Land and Water Legacy Program is a highly valued program by residents there. Additionally, every project funded has done so with unanimous county board support, and the electeds who support it are popular with residents. We'll also share how this work connects with Washington County's comprehensive plan, how a parcel of land becomes eligible for the program, the important role of data and mapping, what the acquisition process looks like, what the ongoing commitment for a county is, the important role partnerships play in the success of the program, and the resulting impact of this 20-year program. So a brief overview. Washington County partners with landowners and organizations to purchase land and interest in land to keep it in its natural state. The Land and Water Legacy Program started with a small win of state grant funds that put into motion a handful of successful projects. Soon residents were asking for more and then passing a voter-led ballot referendum by an easy majority, more than 60% of voters in favor, authorizing the county board to bond up to $20 million to protect land and interests in land. The results are concrete, measurable, and visible. With that $20 million now nearly spent, 47 projects on 1,575 acres have been protected, with partners investing more than $28 million in the county. So it draws an enormous amount of money into Washington County as well from outside sources. We highlight that this work is integrated into the county's 2040 comprehensive plan with goal, policy, and objectives language focused on protection, restoration, and enhancement of high-quality natural areas. Land and Water Legacy, we want to briefly highlight program eligibility criteria for a project or parcel. The first 5 bullets that you see here reflect language from the voter ballot referendum. You can see the themes: water, 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 wetlands, trees, woodlands, parks, trails, open space, and public access. The latter bullets highlight additional criteria later established by the county board to provide further program direction. This includes prioritizing projects on the top 10 areas, priority areas map, projects that are adjacent to water or other protected lands, projects requested by a city or township, projects serving multiple purposes and allowing public access, and projects leveraging additional dollars from other sources. Mapping plays a critical role and grounds decision-making in data, which lends the program a high degree of credibility with residents. The map on the right is the original Land and Water Legacy Program Top 10 Priority Areas map used until last year. The yellow areas inside the red circles are the 10 highest priority areas. Parcels within these 10 areas and along the rivers receive the highest priority ranking. We rank every project and focus projects and funding on the highest quality areas and features. The top 10 priority areas map is intended to be a guide and provide focus, but the county board ultimately decides if any given parcel becomes protected. The map on the left is the currently used map, upgraded with the latest nature-related data and adopted in December of 2023, so just most recently. You can see that this upgrade creates a connected corridor between the top 10 priority areas and visually links them with the St. Croix and Mississippi rivers, which run along the entire eastern and southern boundaries of Washington County. It not only connects these areas, but it recognizes that the buffer areas are also important. In summary, it is this key map that helps focus efforts and guide county decision-making to ensure some of the most irreplaceable and highest quality features are protected. Just briefly, the mechanics behind a land acquisition project, or the general flow of work completed once it comes into the county, generally looks like this. Projects are usually initiated by a landowner directly calling the county or being referred by a conservation organization. The county only works with willing sellers. The county does very little to no outreach beyond its webpage for this program. Staff conduct research, create maps, review the site, complete assessments, and rank projects. The county board is then given an introductory presentation about the project and signals to proceed with the appraisal and surveying. A project typically receives 2 to 4 reviews by the board. Project or conservation easement terms are then worked out with the landowner. Staff seek a financial partner or write grant proposals to provide project funding matches. And then the remaining due diligence is completed and a closing occurs. In terms of internal structure at Washington County, the program and staff dedicated to the program work out of the Office of Administration and convene a project management team with representatives of the Public Works and Finance departments on a regular or as-needed basis. Washington County's practice is to contribute 30 to 50% of a project's assessed value sourced from referendum bonds, and the county seeks the remainder in matching funds from partners. Cities are one of our most frequent partners as we support them in building the green spaces and connecting corridors that residents identify with livable, walkable, high quality, and desirable living. We also do a fair number of conservation easements, so another of the program's most frequent partners is the Minnesota Land Trust. State funds are typically involved in every project. The bottom square is a list of the different partners the county has had over the now 23-year life of the protection efforts. We note that there are funding mechanisms other than a referendum that could be used to start this work. Washington County's starting point was an initial small pot of funds, of state grant funds, not a referendum. Seeking a feasibility report of your funding options may prove helpful to you as a board in discussing how to financially structure a program. In terms of ongoing commitments, once projects are complete, the ongoing commitment involves conducting site visits, restoring and enhancing a property's natural features, and assuring no violations of the protective terms occurs. In summary, here again are the numbers highlighting demonstrable results from 20 years plus of implementing a collective vision. These are solid numbers, but visiting the projects makes an even more compelling case. A simple internet search for Washington County Land and Water Legacy Program will get you to a short video showcasing some of the projects completed, or you could simply drive across the river to nearby projects and see them for yourselves. You would do well to start with the Eiple property in northern downtown Stillwater, the conservation area next to Lakeside Park in Bayport, Oxbow Trails at Bellwyn Conservancy in Afton, or Law Lake Park in Woodbury. There's also a link to the webpage and a short video about the program on the next slide. Starting is, of course, everything. As an initial step, you may here want to consider just setting up a program as a way to encourage people to donate natural areas to the county. I have met many landowners who want to pass on what they have had the privilege of enjoying to others, but they do need assurance that it will stay that way. Developing a program name and a simple, well-designed web page that communicates the vision, eligibility, priority areas, and process may help inspire that sort of generous action and build trust with residents. A second phase could be to seek some state funding or matching funds from other sources to undertake a few projects so everyone can understand the mechanics of how a project and the program would work. The point here being that there is flexibility around how this work emerges. The important piece, again, is starting. So thank you for taking the time to consider this today. I forewarn you, you may find this work to be really fun and one of the more, if not most satisfying legacies you could leave as a county board supervisor. I'm happy to take questions if there are some, or you may feel free to contact me with any questions as your time allows. You may obtain my email information from staff. Thank you so much.
Do we have questions for June? We may have, and by email, we could contact you. Is that right?
Sure,
I
anytime.
deeply appreciate you taking the time to come in and see us today. It was fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for your time.
Very good. We're going to move on to a presentation by Alicia, Environmental Education.
Good morning, or it's not morning, it's good afternoon, good evening. I'm Alicia Miller. I work in land and water conservation. We got our name back. I'm very excited about that. I've been doing this now for 20 years, and Dan, I need new glasses. And Jason asked me to come in and present to you today about what I do because you were at the area contest for the speech poster contest, and you were very interested. And so I said I would come in and let you know kind of what I do. So the education program that we have now in St. Croix County is very unique in the county system. Of the 72 counties in Wisconsin, I think we were the first, and maybe now there are 2 counties that actually have an educator on staff who's not just staff doing education programs, but actually an educator to do that. And so as I go around the county and meet other counties, they're like, this is your full-time job? I'm like, well, it's part-time, but yes, it's my job. I don't do something else first. I started in 2003, but the program actually started in 2001 with Ruth Stern. And prior to that, there was no staff dedicated to that. It was just people would come in and ask, and as staff could, they would fill it in. So when I started in 2003, to just kind of give you an overview, we had about 2,625 contacts that year with different students or adults in those programs. We had 11 presentations that were requested, 14 stream ecology workshops. So you notice we get the kids in the stream. We do some water testing in the stream, try and do as much hands-on as possible. 10 field days, which is essentially just still outside but not in the water. Also have a conservation speaking contest and the conservation poster contest that I'll talk about a little bit later here. In contrast, in 2023, we had 4,771 contacts. This is down, though. On average, we have 5,100, but we're still trying to get back up from COVID. When COVID happened, it cut out our contacts of getting into the schools. So in 2003, we had 11 presentation requests. I had 65 last year. 6 field days, a career day, the Conservation Speaking and Poster Contest, Wisconsin Envirothon, Halloween at Homestead. We've added adult programming like snowshoeing, the conservation partner meetings, Parade of Natives, gardening, master naturalist classes to help have volunteers at these field days where we get the kids out and we get hands-on and let's try and find out about things. We also, with these educational field days, don't just work with schools, but we work with youth organizations like the Scouts or with non-traditional classes. This is on the left is a class from Hudson, and they're like, can you get us out? And I'm like, sure, you want to go in the water? And like, that'd be fantastic. And so that was a day that we got to get these kids out who'd never been on that kind of stuff before. So that was pretty amazing. The classroom presentations, because I'm the only one who can do this, I can't get all the schools out into field days. So I'm like, we can't do all these field days, but I can come to your classroom. And so I come in and we do, so the one on the left is stormwater pollution. So we talk about runoff from agriculture, from construction, from industry, from golf courses, from sewage treatment, from homes and roads. The kids always like that one. On the right, we're doing some soil testing for pH and phosphorus and nitrogen. We do programs on, again, stormwater. So on the left, instead of having the display, this is one where it's a story we read and the kids come up and they pour their pollution into the bucket and they see it get dirty. They think that's really cool. We have a groundwater model, so we talk about groundwater and soils. We also collaborate with the community. So this was a school that came and asked and said, I see you're teaching about rain gardens. Can you come work with our students? They had an after-school garden club, so we helped them. This is a rain garden that was at Hudson Middle School. It's not there anymore because, unfortunately, that's where they put the extension on the building. But 10 years ago, it was a pretty awesome rain garden. It was a rain garden, a perennial garden, a vegetable garden. It was so cool. The kids loved to go out there. We do environmental community events. So this was with my now, she's 16 now, Vera. She's my friend's daughter, but we did a STEM day at a school. We do Earth Fest. We've done River Fest. We've done Earth Day programs in the past. We work with the community. So this was Just Add Water out of the FIPS. They had this education program, but they wanted an art side of it, but they also wanted the science side of it. So I came and helped with the science, and then they did an art project. So you probably have seen this. It's in Hudson, downtown. I don't know what road it's on, though. Down by the library, but up the hill a little bit. It's in that area. We've done library presentations. This was a model that, again, that Enviroscape model, but I dolled it up so we could leave it on the rack and people could walk by and read it as they could. Wisconsin Land and Water Environmental Education. So as a county, there is a county, a group of counties, and we are part of the Wisconsin Land and Water Environmental Education Group. So this is all the land and water, soil and water conservation boards. And we have a conservation poster contest, a conservation speech contest. We help provide the Wisconsin Envirothon and conservation camp. So these 3 posters up here were our posters from this year from the conservation poster contest. It's divided into different grades, but we have here on the far left is Alexis DeFlorin from from Hudson High School and 10th through 12th grade group. And so she took first at our contest, then they go on to the area contest where they compete against 8 other counties. She took 3rd at that contest. The winner of the area goes on to state. The winner of the state actually goes into the national contest. In the national contest, you win like $100 or something, so that's kind of cool. On the top on the right is our 2nd grader. She's from Evelyn Kuphall from West Side Elementary School, and she took 2nd at the area contest. And then on the bottom there is Corbin Halverson from River Falls Public Montessori, who also came in 2nd at area. So these were our first in St. Croix County, but they took 2nd at the area. We have a conservation speech contest, and the speeches can be about any environmental topic. And so again, we have 3 different age groups. On the left were our elementary, so 5th and 6th graders. And then there's a 7th through 8th grade group, and then there's a 9th through 12th grade group. And so this year we actually had a senior. He's not a senior. He's in the senior group, but he's a sophomore. He won state. So he took first at our contest. He took first at area, and he just won state. So that was I was pretty excited about that. I thought he was going to win state. So that's Carter Stuvey. He's from New Richmond High School. And then in the elementary division, 2nd on the left is Veda. She came in first at ours, and she came in 2nd at the area contest. Another program that Wisconsin Land and Water does that we helped to support, it was the Wisconsin Envirothon. It's the state's ultimate middle and high school environmental science challenge, where teams of 5 high school or middle school students participate in hands-on outdoor field challenges designed by natural resource professionals and educators. So they compete in forestry. On the bottom there, that's aquatics. On the bottom on the left here, or sorry, the right, that's wildlife. The top is soils, and then the center is current issues. So before the competition, they know what the current issue is, and they have to work to do the research and put together this presentation. And then the day of, they actually get to go and do all these different stations. And they're all hands-on, so they're pretty cool. And St. Croix County has had a team participate each year from 2015 to 2019. And then again, in COVID, things stopped. We got new teachers, so we have to build it back up again. But this year's competition is April 19th, 2024. And it's always held at the Wisconsin Lions Camp in Rochelle, Wisconsin. And then finally, we have our conservation camps. There's a middle school camp and a high school conservation camp. And so conservation professionals across the state come and they help. They're either chaperones or they are leaders of the different stations at the different things. There's usually a canoe trip. In the very center there, that was a fire building competition. All the kids were broken into teams, and the first one to burn through the string won. So that was pretty intense, pretty exciting. For the high school one, they do some things with shooting sports sometimes. There's usually a conservation project. So often they've done like invasives removal, or they've done shoreline restoration. So they're getting them out there to kind of do hands-on work to try and learn about the conservation profession. And then finally, the last thing I'd like to talk about today is that to do this work, we have staff that can help, but not as much as you can see, we have lots of people requesting things from us. So I am partnering, St. Croix County is partnering with Carpenter Nature Center and Willow River and Kinnickinnick State Parks to run the St. Croix Valley, Wisconsin Master Naturalist Program. And so what that is that the Wisconsin Master Naturalist Program is similar to the Wisconsin, or to Master Gardeners, in that you get some education, and then after you have that education, every year you do volunteer hours to help keep you current. But instead of learning just about gardens, we learn about all sorts of things naturalist related. And then once they've gone through this 40-hour program, they are master naturalists, and they can help volunteer. And so we have them help at conservation field days, doing education. We've had them help with doing stewardship projects, so invasive removal. And we've had them help with, I always forget the third one. I don't have it in here. So service, leadership, and lifelong learning are what they come out with. So those are our 3 things that we talk about. The Master Naturalist. This is our 2021 class, graduating class, but we've done this since 2018. So this, actually, next Saturday starts our first class for the upcoming group. So, thank you.
Thanks so much for coming. Anybody have any questions? Land and Water Program, education, excellent presentation.
Mr. Chair, if I could add, we had our 5-year land and water management plan review a few months back, and one of the main things that sets St. Croix County apart from other counties within the state is our outreach and education and the programming that Alicia does with our area youth. And as she brought up, I think there's only 2 counties that are doing this in the state, but all those 5,100 contacts are within St. Croix County or very close to St. Croix County. So it is a huge impact, and it is very local.
I know when I have contact with people like Mike Ryder and Buck Malik and other people who work in the naturalist community, that everybody is always impressed with education efforts that are done here, and I know that they provide Sportsman Alliance does a scholarship, and they choose from that pool. So your work isn't always appreciated, and we're proud of you. So thanks for your time. All right, we've got a meeting to conduct here. Let's get on to resolution approving text amendments to the Town of Hudson zoning. John.
Mr. Chair and committee members, the Town of Hudson is seeking county approval of some zoning text amendments. Under state statute in Wisconsin, even counties with their own zoning ordinance are required to secure county board approval. In this particular case, the Town of Hudson is adding language to their sign ordinance for their industrial zoning district. Within your packet, you were provided copies of those standards. We have reviewed those standards. We don't see anything, out of the ordinary or concerning with those standards. The other thing we did review is to ensure that the town followed the proper public hearing notification. We were provided minutes from their plan commission and town board meeting where they did approve those amendments. And so what we've put together for your consideration tonight is a resolution that would ratify what the Town of Hudson has approved related to their industrial zoning district sign provisions. Any questions?
What just summarize, what are they adding? Are they, in
know,
terms
they're-
of signs?
Actually, what they did is that when they last codified their zoning ordinance, they did not include industrial zoning district sign provisions. So they're actually adding in what they had in the late 2000s. And really, it just establishes square footage requirements for freestanding signs. They're illuminated signs. If there's a multi-tenant building, they establish standards for those types of facilities. So again, they're just getting back to where they were. They talk about monument signage requirements, the width and the height and the square footage of those. Again, nothing out of the ordinary or unusual that we looked at.
So it's not going to be like Las Vegas out there?
No, it will not.
All right, does the committee have any questions? Does anybody have a motion? We need to approve.
I'll do a
this.
motion to approve.
All right, we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any other further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to business item
you.
number 5. Thank you, John. Jason, Phase 1 options, Eckert Bluffland Park Development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. So at the last meeting, we talked about some options with the various trails. One was the northern part of the Eckert Blufflands Park. That was kind of ruled out immediately just due to the cost and the challenges with the terrain on site. Then we talked about the access here, which is in the black lines. The green lines are the park boundaries. Then if you remember the white lines here, those were the low-cost alternative to get some trails out there. This is originally planned to be an ADA trail in the master plan, so it would be a paved trail. But our conversation at the last meeting was that this would just be a gravel trail if the committee decided to pursue it. However, it'd be prepped with a good enough base and stuff and width that it would allow for future pavement of a portion or all of it at some point. The committee also asked us to communicate with the St. Croix County Highway Department about their willingness and ability to design and install the park entrance here, which we have done. And I believe Supervisor Anderson brought up about having a couple swing bridges, and Supervisor Coner also brought up about possibly having the Department of Army potentially help with the construction. So we've got a couple swing bridges in this a little bit bigger phase of Phase 1, which would be the yellow lines in addition to the white lines. The black line here is the existing road going down to the Eckert cabin. And the red line here, that is River Heights Trail going into the park. So we don't have exact cost estimates for this. Last Thursday night, I went to the Town of St. Joe Town Board meeting to give them an update, because before the prior meeting in February here, and that Teresa Johnson had brought up and that they had not been approached about vacating this northern chunk of old Highway 35. And so I went there, kind of explained the process. The town informed me that they would like to have a memo of understanding with the county, or an MOU, for it, to basically explain, who's going to pay for what, as far as like the removal of old Highway 35, which it's our understanding that the county would do that. Then they would have some cost for publication of a public hearing notice, and to have their council review the documents and draft the documents for the actual vacation of this road, which we can probably do that. As we kept on talking, the original master plan had a cul-de-sac about in this area right here on the map. And so they asked about that and who's going to build that. And I'm like, if we're taking and blocking off the road, we're going to have to build that cul-de-sac. So that was all fine. But then there was also conversation that they would like the county then to pave from the cul-de-sac down to the town line, which the town of Hudson and town of St. Joe line here is right at the horizontal line here. And so this whole road from new Highway 35 up to the cul-de-sac is about 1,800 feet. You know, so even paving this portion here from the cul-de-sac down to the town line, of course, it's going to require significant cost and improvements in order to do this access if the town is going to take and require the county to do this in order for that. So that's why we didn't get really far into the depth as far as what the cost estimates are going to be. We've got some other options that we could consider. We have not approached the town of Hudson yet. And so the town of Hudson comes in from the south here. This is a very bad access point on new Highway 35. There's been a couple accidents there. But, you know, do we look at trying to bring this road out and maybe even extend it south a little bit to come up so that it's more square to the new Highway 35? If we did that, we'd probably have a lot less fill in this area. And then maybe we would only pave a portion up to the park if we wanted to. So that's an option to consider. Talking with Robbie too, there's some things that would have to be, you know, done as far as title searching, you know, to see what the history is behind old Highway 35. Or Supervisor Anderson, maybe we just overshot this a little bit because you had originally asked about just trying to create some trails out there. But we were really concerned about the safety of people being able to get into the park is I guess why we brought up this whole access issue. And so maybe we use the existing road going into the park, maybe we develop some of the trails, you know, and we see how much use and how much demand there is for the area. And then we come back and we, you know, approach the access point in that time to see what our parking needs and what our access needs really are, if you'd want to do that. So, but for sure, you know, and that there was this kind of a $2 million number floated around at the last meeting. It can definitely be done for that amount. We would simply build what we could, and we could take in and get a better number refined through the KIP budget process if you wanted to go forward. I realize that we got a couple months to do that, so that would give us time to go out and approach the town of Hudson here and move forward. But the highway department is definitely committed in helping with the trails and with the accesses. If we did go with the original access going up here, it may make sense to build everything in the black lines from about here north. So that would include the main parking lot entrance, just because if the highway department's moved in, they got their big equipment there, it would make sense to take and create all of our stormwater facilities at that same point so that we're only disturbing an area at once. And then we could leave that gravel, you know, until we had the funds available to pave or improve it. So I guess what I'm looking for is, you know, whether the committee wants to move forward with just trails, or if you're still on board with trying to create a better access into the park and what we can do there, how to proceed.
A couple of questions. Currently, the red line is the existing access?
Correct. The red line is the existing road going through here, and it goes up to serve those. The original master plan had it being removed from about the curve in the road out to old Highway 35. However, there's a pretty well documented easement for the existing road that was actually surveyed, and then there was a 1 rod in width on each side of that surveyed line for the road. So the county would have to negotiate easements and that to take and move this if we were going to go up to the north. So that's where we would suggest leaving this road as is, but that there isn't anything stopping us from being able to use it because the county owns the underlying land. And we do have a current parking area. It's very primitive. It's more like what you'd see a DNR field parking area about right in this area. that would be very easily expanded into a bigger parking area if we wanted to do the white trail there. There's also a very small amount of parking right up here off from the curve, but it's basically a wide spot in the curve, but there could be extra parking provided up in here pretty easily too, because it's high ground and wouldn't require a lot of fill.
Yes, one of my questions is if the red line is kind of where the existing is, and we're being asked to provide basically an entire new road for the town, would it be worthwhile pursuing, looking at options for access to just totally eliminate using any of that area and purchase a right-of-way to get over to 35 that's at a more suitable location somewhere in there? You've got a pretty large, expansive area. I don't know the terrain or anything or how the costs would be, but if you're purchasing the right-of-way, our road costs would go down substantially if it wasn't going all the way up to the northeast corner. And it may be more cost conservative for the county to be able to just cut through and not have to build all these new roads.
Right, so the issue that we would have is this is all town of St. Joe Road from my mouse here all the way up. So anytime that we're gonna cross that portion of the road, I'm sure the town is gonna still want that MOU for it. Now, there is the possibility that we could talk to a property owner up here and maybe have the road entrance extend farther north. However, we don't know if there would be enough separation out on new Highway 35 between the old Highway 35 access and our new park access to whether or not they would allow that. So, but that would be another opportunity that we could explore.
Yeah, if I could jump in too. I think the question we have for you is where's the priority? So with the first dollars that we're going to spend, do you want us to start on trails? Do you want us to start on the access to the park? Which one is the priority for you? There's several different ideas that we can look through. Talking to St. Joe recently, they're trying to get as much out of it as they can get out of it, which, you know, I don't blame them. I would have done the same thing. But being on the other side of the table, we want to give them as little as possible. So the question then is, where's the priority? Is it roads and access, parking lots? Is it the trails? Where do you want us to spend the first dollar?
I think you have to do an access point for sure, and then a trail option beyond that. But the towns that have access through that is in the township of St. Joe, correct?
Joe, yep.
So was there any discussion on that access road to them, or is that technically a private drive through there off of Old 35?
So the road here, the town was concerned about us removing the portion from the curve here out to Old Highway 35. So they were pretty, uneasy, I guess, in that once they heard and that we were going to leave that be, because I think a bunch of their people and that are back on the river there had expressed concerns about that portion of the road being removed. And we would just sign it very clearly so that everybody knew it was a private drive and that our park users wouldn't use it to or from the park.
Yeah, we've had those residents in a couple of different times. They've always wanted that road left the way it is. That's their access back to their houses, and the park entrance to be a separate entrance. So ideally, there's two entrances there, one for the park users and one for the private residences.
Yeah, Supervisor Van Summer.
Well, and that's what I was thinking. I think, it would make sense. Why don't we, first of all, talk to the town of Hudson instead of the town of St. Joe? If we can come into that corner and leave that road and maybe connect with it farther in, but let them have that section of road, which is kind of a scenic section of road if you've ever driven in there. But maybe we come from the corner and go straighter in so we can still connect with the trail to the cabin, the trail to our white trails, and just let St. Joe do what they want to do. Because it's a shorter distance from the town of Hudson. And, you know, we own what's inside the green line, so we could easily snap into that corner without a whole lot of issue.
So you would say something, Jerry, about coming in at the corner here,
Yep.
maybe coming over here, hitting the edge of the prairie or something so that there wasn't a lot of tree removal costs, and then kind of tying up to the parking lot. Something on that concept. Maybe I'm not exactly right, but yep.
Right. I agree with Ryan that we have to have an access point, otherwise whatever you build on the other side of the wall is useless. So you have to have an access point. So we have to start there.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the first question I have for you is where you want us to start. So we'll work through the different ideas. They'll come up with something on that.
So I guess my understanding of this is we could like still have access through the road that's already there, right? It's not like it's not like you would have to walk there if we did nothing with the access immediately. I understand the obvious visual concerns as far as when you're trying to get back on the highway.
There's some safety issues with either of the two old 35 access points, but that's one of the other things that Jason and I have talked about. Maybe we could just fix the intersections and not redo the whole road.
The safety concerns have come up both, correct me if I'm wrong, but the highway commissioner and the sheriff have expressed safety concerns with the traffic.
Yeah.
If we increase the traffic at either one of those junctions, but the north one is the less dangerous, the southern one is the more dangerous?
Probably the way it is right now. And the issue with both accesses are that you're coming upgrade like this, so you don't really see much either way on that for what's on the new Highway 35. And instead of coming in at a 90-degree corner where it's easy to see right and left, you're coming in at maybe a 30-degree or 45-degree angle, you know, and that. So there's a lot of blind spots and there's a lot of sight concerns because it is on a slow curve there.
I actually prefer the south entrance rather than the north entrance.
I think the south entrance would be easier to square off, it looks like. And we'd be doing a lot less with roads then, as far as cutting them off or putting in cul-de-sacs or whatnot. I guess putting in a better access without doing trails to me seems, maybe you limit how much of the trails you do, but without doing any, just seems kind of, doesn't serve much of a purpose, I suppose, in my mind.
Yeah, so what we talked about was, trying to do like $1 million a year, but the first year maybe doing $2 million. So we would do access and then one of the first easiest trails. So the second question I have for you is $2 million is going to require a bond issue. I have a bond issue because the highway shop is going to be next year anyways. So it'd be easy enough to add $2 million onto that. But if I add a park project onto a bond issue, am I going to get 15 county board supervisors to approve it?
The only way to know is try it.
I guess you can always push the park project onto the bond issue, and if someone doesn't want to bond $2.5 million or $2 million for a park project, they want to do 1.5. Well, okay, we do $500,000 and less trails. I guess it is what it is.
Yeah, I guess our thought process, and that about the access, we don't know of any grant funds that are available to build in that access. There might be, some grant funds for building a parking lot down the road, but there would be significant cost savings by having our county highway department do the work. And if they're already there, they're probably going to end up having to find a borrow site close by for fill. And that if they go with that north route, probably not as much on the south end, but it just makes sense that when they're engaged in that project that they kind of knock out the big infrastructure. And then after that, we can apply for grants for the trails. We can do a lot of stuff just underneath our natural park budget, for trail development and stuff out there. And we can apply for grants for shower buildings and stuff. But there's just no grant money to get that access into there and have it be safe. Supervisor Shirley.
So Ken, if we don't have it on the next year's, the next 2025 or 2026 bond issue?
So I'm anticipating bond issues in 2025 and 2027. So the bond issues in 25 would be primarily, it's the Hudson Highway Shop, reconstructing that or building a new one. And then in 2027, we'd be looking at a jail expansion project, which would be substantial.
In my opinion, I think that if the public safety referendum fails, we're gonna have a hard time passing that in 2025. I think you'd be better off pushing that off to 2027, unfortunately. But I think that, like you said, I don't know that we would have the votes.
Well, when the public safety referendum is approved then, you think it'll be fine?
I think we need to just try it. Because
I
we
think it'd
can't
be a
prove a
good
negative.
discussion at the committee of the whole.
Okay, then.
Okay, well, that gives me some guidance in that. I'll reach out to the town of Hudson, make contact with them. I'll talk with Greg Haig and Robbie a little bit more about that south access, kind of what's it gonna really take to make that a feasible project. And we'll look at those options, and then hopefully we can have some better numbers for the April committee of the whole.
Good. Any other conversation or questions? No, we're going to move on then. Thank you. Next, we're going to talk about email notification process, and Jason, you might as well lead us out.
All right, so Supervisor Coner had brought it up a few months ago now about notifying property owners when there's any zoning district change that may affect one of their properties or the uses of their properties. And so when we talk about email list, and that the county doesn't purchase email lists like some of these other suppliers or vendors might do, so that they just spam you with a bunch of junk mail. However, we do have nice sign up for people that are concerned. It's called Notify Me. It's right here on our county website, very top. And so if I click on this, there's a couple different ones out there already. We've got 2 newsletters that are out there. And so people can take and enter their email address here. They go through just a couple quick processes, and then they can either get an email or a text message, and that with that news, whatever it might be. So we could put public hearing notices out here, or we could take and have ordinance amendments like Chapter 13 or Chapter 15. Hey, check out this proposed ordinance. And if you're fine with getting those notes, and that drop to you, that's something that can be done. But then we also have the ability to unsubscribe and that from this, which is kind of the big deal, is that we just can't buy that whole email list, because then people don't have the ability to unsubscribe from it. So this is an existing service that we could do. We would just set it up with Adam, and that whenever we have anything significant like ordinance amendments or any big town zoning changes, we could put them in here. Then anybody that's on that list would take and be automatically sent a text or an email letting them know. So I can kind of show you what it looks like. So here with the recycling newsletter, we've went online. So this newsletter just went out, March 20th. If I go back, March 20th, 2024 at 10:08 a.m. So this is our new recycling newsletter that's electronic. And so if you're signed up for this one, you get this one. But if you're not concerned about recycling and you're concerned about the Veterans Office, you can subscribe to the Veterans one and not get the recycling stuff. So you're able to select the content that you want to receive. So if we created something in this portal and that, would that kind of satisfy what you're wanting to do, Supervisor Coner?
I think it's a grand idea, but I don't think that that's going to put us where we want to be for what the problem is. Because we're making an assumption that everybody's gonna sign up for it in the county and that they're all gonna know that this even exists. I don't believe that you probably have the entire county that's signed up for the recycling one right now. I have, and I appreciate it, and it's a really good tool.
Yeah.
And I think no matter what, I think that's a really good idea to move ahead with that, to be able to have those notifications out there. The more transparency, the better.
Okay.
But I still don't think it resolves the issue when you have large groups of people that have zoning changes brought onto them without having any idea that it's even going on. Because then, again, you're making an assumption that everybody in the county knows to sign up for this.
Yeah, Supervisor Anderson?
Just to echo, I guess, what Supervisor Counter was saying, it really doesn't solve the problem by itself. And I don't even know that it would exactly, trying to combine them, or like if you're on this one, we don't need to send you a mailer, isn't really, I guess, fair either, because address, people sell and buy houses all the time, right? So I definitely agree that it's worth doing. I just don't know that it would prevent or preclude or should preclude us from sending out the mailed notifications also.
That's one of the problems you hit right on, and that with having an email list is people are buying and selling properties all the time. So that's the positive thing about something like this, is if they unsubscribe themselves, they're kind of managing that database for us, and it's not like staff has to go through and keep it up to date. Yeah, Supervisor Shirley?
I like the system and how it works. I've been on the different ones for a long time, but are we able or legally able or to have a separate flyer or something that goes with our property tax statements to property owners? Is that something we can put in there?
You can have a tax bill stuffer added to the tax bills, yes. It would go with all the tax bills.
So I see this working well if we use it as a PR project and have like a QR code or something on it that it goes out, or it's on more things that we're trying to build this list. I mean, it's going to be a secondary notification because not everybody's going to get it, and we all realize that, but the more that you can bolster it, the better it is.
I think it's going to take a time for this to build, but I think in the future you'll see this is where we'll be, and that's why we have to push onward. Until then, I guess we'll have to do what we have to do, but I think this is very important.
Anybody else? Then I'm going to jump in. This doesn't preclude a postcard notification if there's a dramatic rezoning. We can always add a postcard if something comes up that's really big or will affect a pocket. You know, you get a big area and then there's one hot zone that, whoa, those people are really going to get slammed. We could, you know, as a committee, look at that and say, hey, we should send those folks. There's not a reason that the committee can't make a policy, a short term, one time, hey, let's send them, and the staff can always bring that up. Look at this, guys, you should consider doing this, and the staff can do that on their own too. They have that's an operational decision and a tweener. So I'm going to offer my opinion. I'm going to agree with you guys that maybe electronically send out a notification in the tax statement that you guys are hearing that, right? And just continue to tell people this is a great opportunity for you to stay in contact with your county through the tax statement. A paper notice that you can be in contact electronically. So bring the Neanderthals to the modern age. It's a great idea. I would need that. So you don't need a vote on this, just a kind of a little bit of conversation, right?
Yeah, we're just sharing it with you. And my take on it is this is a great extra feature, but it's not replacing any legal notice requirements.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, this is above and beyond.
All that being the case, we're going to move on to the next business item. consideration of amendments to the 2024 Community Development Fee Schedule. And Jason will take over here.
So, while I'm finding it here, there's just a couple changes that we would like to do because we've found them after you guys approved the fee schedule last fall. What's that? Oh, sorry. So the changes here are in red. And so currently, when somebody comes to our office and applies for a permit, and that we take and collect their fee via check or credit card, and unfortunately, we're charged that credit card processing fee right up front. And I'd like to tell you that it's a 2% charge or it's a 3% charge. The reality is it bounces anywhere from about 1.75% all the way up to 3.5%, and that depending on the amount. And so, plus we have our time and that for doing the refund, finance. So we'd like to just take an insert so that it's very transparent, very clear up front, that if you pay for a permit or something and you change your mind, of course, if it's on our end or if there's nothing needed, then we're going to refund the full amount. But if it's on their end, like they don't want to move forward with the project anymore, they would be required to pay that 5% of the original permit fee amount, just so that we're not losing. So, and it really doesn't sound like a lot, but on a $400 permit, it's about $20 a pop, you know, and that we're losing every time. So, yep. A lot of it, where it kind of comes in is in park stuff too, but we've got a separate cancellation fee, you know, but I mean, there is quite a few cancellations going back and forth because people changing their plans. So, okay. Okay, the next fee is in regards to our sanitary program, and we didn't have this in the original fee schedule because since then we've obtained agent status through the state. And what agent status means is that now in-house, the county can review mounds, at-grades, pressurized systems, stuff that would normally require state-approved plans here. And so people will be able to apply to the county and have kind of a one-stop shopping experience because they can get their plan review and they can get their sanitary permit all in one shot. Right now, the state is running about 2 to 3 weeks on getting their review done, and then if they submit it to us, we'd have that extra 2 to 3 weeks. We should be able to shave off 2 to 3 weeks for that. We set the fee here at $400. Normally, the state plan review fee is $250. However, if you want an expedited review, it's $400. So that's kind of where we thought. And as far as staff time, that's where we really figured that we're going to have in it for staff. Now, this is only for normal single-family houses up to 1,000 gallons per day, which is basically a 6-bedroom house. Any commercial systems would still require state plan approval. I just don't feel like we've got the staff capacity or the desire to get into some of those more complicated systems because they require a lot of on-sites, you know, time dosing, duplex pumps. It's quite a commitment to take and jump into that world. Whereas these, generally, they're very standardized. The same plumber puts in the same 3-bedroom mound. That's a 6 by 75 foot mound, and he uses those same plans over. So there's a lot of easy, you know, permitting process that can be done with this. And then the last changes were with the parks, and I had a little oversight with the wording. Vista Prairie was originally set up as a group camp, and that's how we promoted it. But we've also got Whispering Oaks, which is the land that's kind of south of there, and that's also our group camping area. And so it didn't make sense to take and have one called group camping and the other one not. So it made a lot of sense just to take and make a rate for group campground. We still kept the 501c3 rate in there at half the amount, and we should be good there. So we are also making improvements to the Vista Prairie campground by extending the pads so that they can fit bigger units in there and putting in water. And we're using that because right now, in the past year or so, it hasn't been filling up. So we're trying to get more individual users out there too, just to use that part of the park. So all I need is a consensus from the committee that you're okay with these fees. Kevin Grayview would be the one helping us out with the sanitary plan reviews. So that should be a positive thing. Yeah, Supervisor Shirley.
Just a quick question on the septic
Yep.
review. Is the state forwarding all of those, or does the homeowner have the option to send it to the state or send it to the county?
They have the option to do either one.
Okay.
Yep. So there's a large number of mounds and at-grades within the county. And so if we did take on all of them, that would be quite a time commitment from staff, and we probably don't have the ability to do that. But there's a lot of times in that where maybe it is an emergency install and they're willing to pay the $150 more to get it done right away. That's what it's really designed for.
Okay, so at this time, do we have any further questions, or I would entertain a motion to accept these changes?
I'll make a motion to accept the fee schedule changes.
Second, all right, moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Let's move on to business item number 8. Discussion on amending St. Croix County Chapter 15 zoning ordinance. This will be John Hilgers.
So this next item was raised by the committee, I think it was about 2 or 3 meetings ago. We had talked about some of our ag entertainment standards. And this kind of stems back to a rezoning request we had last summer, if you recall, in the town of Kinnikinnick. We kind of updated the committee back then about what the standards were for ag entertainment, but at that time we didn't pursue any amendments. We didn't really get the direction to do so. So we're kind of bringing it back at the request of the committee from a couple meetings ago. In the meantime, our staff has also met with local town officials about some common zoning violations and some other items, such as the use of sawmills, different contractor storage yards. So if we're talking about a zoning amendment to ag entertainment, we'd also like to keep this in context that maybe we can revisit some of these other categories and standards. But as a refresher for the committee, with respect to our ag entertainment uses, we'll just talk about the authority and standards. Right now, the county has 2 agricultural zoning districts, Ag 1 and Ag 2. Both of these zoning districts meet the criteria for the state farmland preservation zoning districts under the Farmland Preservation Wisconsin statutes. And this allows participating towns to allow their residents to claim the income tax rebate on their tax forms. And right now we have, I believe it's 7 participating towns that are in that program. The farmland preservation zoning districts must be approved and certified by DATCAP. And again, landowners are able to participate by claiming tax credits on their income taxes. Now, being in this program, the county is required to allow specific uses under statute 9144, either as permitted or conditional uses. So we have the list of ag uses, farm residences, and then I highlighted in yellow the category that we believe the ag entertainment standards fall under. Accessory uses are allowed, including any activity or business that is an integral part of an ag use, or a business, whether or not it's associated with an ag use or not, that is conducted by the owner of the farm and employs no more than 4 full-time employees and does not impair the current ag uses. And then the list goes on to list other varying uses. Below you see a map of our participating towns. Everything with a crosshatch are participants in the farmland preservation program. Real quickly, as these provisions were adopted back in 2012, the county defined ag entertainment under 4 broad categories. These are farm-based enterprises or businesses that combine the elements of ag entertainment and tourism. They include outdoor recreation, educational experiences, entertainment, and hospitality services. And then under each yellow category, we kind of provide some examples that are within the code. I won't go into detail, but the hospitality services fall under the weddings, overnight farm, and ranch stays. Under our current categories, and again, we did not change these standards when we went and revisited the zoning code in 2019 through our comprehensive revision. So the standards I'm going to read off are the standards that have been in place since 2012. In the Ag 1 and Ag 2 districts, the ag entertainment is allowed as a permitted use if you do not exceed 15 calendar days per year. So if you stay under 15, there's no conditional use permit review or standard of review. Again, if activities exceed 15 calendar days, a conditional use permit is required. Regardless of the number of days, whether you're at 15 above or below that, any activity exceeding 100 persons during a 24-hour period has to submit an event plan through our staff that is then reviewed. A land use permit is issued to address parking, days and hours of operation, ingress, egress, sanitation, signs, solid waste management. That event plan is then filed with the town clerk, emergency responders, and the local fire district. Again, as I mentioned, these standards have been in place since 2012. They were not amended during the comp revision of 2017 to 2019. Interestingly, one of the themes we heard during our 2019 comprehensive zoning revision is that the county should enable ag entertainment uses in more locations. So we had to create a zoning district outside of the Ag 1 and Ag 2 districts. So we created the commercial C2 district, which is very specific in that it allows ag entertainment uses outside of the ag districts. This zoning must be consistent with the local town comprehensive plans. And in the last 4 years, the county has reviewed and approved 2 rezoning applications that have been filed for the C2 zoning districts. One was in the town of Kinnickinnick and the other one was in the town of Ceylon. So really, based on our view of statute and our view of the code, there are a number of things that the committee could modify should you so choose. And that would be the number of events that would trigger a conditional use permit requirement. And I think we had that discussion during that rezoning application with Kinnickinnick. The question was, why is it 15 events that would have to occur before the CUP is triggered? Again, that was the threshold that was established back in 2012. The other thing the committee could do is modify the event plan requirements. The one thing we believe that is not possible is that it would not be possible to remove the ag entertainment uses as it meets the intent of the statutes as we described earlier as far as what a property owner is allowed to do under farmland preservation unless we as the county no longer wanted to participate in that program. But based on the number of townships that participate, there are quite a few benefactors under the farmland preservation plan program. So again, the committee can go back and revisit the standards, to determine the number of events that would trigger a CUP. We can modify the event plan requirements, but basically that is the extent of what we feel you could modify.
All right, so who wants to go first?
I don't think we should change anything. That's my comment.
As far as the A2, I question the 15-day limit. I think it depends more on what they're actually doing in considering agricultural entertainment. I think there's such a wide variety. I mean, if you're talking about weddings or barn dances, that's one thing. But if they're talking about something more hospitality or educational, I mean, are we really going to make them do a conditional use permit if they're doing education for kids on the farm? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So I don't know how to separate that out, but that's my one comment, at least on the Egg 2 stuff.
Well, I agree with Mr. Shirley that the 15-day thing I think is quite exorbitant, because as someone brought up at one of our deals that we were dealing with, that's every weekend of the summer. And the people who don't want these next to them should have some time off from that. The neighborhood should have some time off of that. So I think we do have to change that part for sure. I think that's too aggressive. I also think that one thing that we've left out is hearing the neighbors, and I'm not sure exactly how to do that, but those 100 people who live next to them that want no part of this, but are told they can't do anything, we don't make any changes on that. That's something also that we need to address. They have as much right to not have that in their neighborhood as the person who wants to put it in has to have in that neighborhood. So maybe one of the things, if we cut that 15 days down to 7, anything over that, they would need a comprehensive, whatever it is,
Conditional use
permit.
permit,
Right,
yeah.
I think that would satisfy a lot of people. But then I think we also have to come up with some plan for listening to the area, the neighborhood.
Another thought on that would be, especially in some of those that we've looked at this last year, if we have somebody looking at moving to an Egg 2 zoning that's abutting an R2 or an R1, trying to define where those Egg 2s are, and I'm not exactly sure what that answer is at this moment, but, some of those, the zoning for the Egg 2 makes more sense surrounded by ag than it does surrounded by an R1 or an R2.
Yes, I'm listening to everything everybody's bringing, and they're making good points. That maybe there's some things that we need to address before we move forward.
My thought is that you guys are both right, but the thing is that the zoning, part of zoning, there's a lot of things that zoning is for, but part of it is to make sure that your rights are, you have the right to enjoy your property in the manner that you expected to when you purchased it. So the people who live around a property expected to enjoy the property a certain way, and now somebody buys the property in the middle of all that and decide to have a party, but only if you rezone it for me. And we're, so now I think it's, personally, and this is why I'm glad that Jerry wanted to have this conversation, the conditional use permitting process is a way to put that under a microscope. And then this committee doesn't do it quickly, and not that we would do it quickly, but it gives the conditional use permitting process, right? The BOA will really focus on that. And they're a quasi-judicial board, and they have an opportunity to go through a quasi-judicial process, something that we don't. And I think we reduce the number of days that this 15 days, we bring it down, I like Jerry's suggestion of 7. And if it's a mild use, they're going to have educational functions or whatever, they shouldn't have any problem whatsoever. And if it's out in the country and they're having weddings, they shouldn't have any problem whatsoever. Or if it's in the middle of a somewhat residential area, then it needs to have some more scrutiny. But it's not for us to say, because it'll be a conditional use. It's not this committee's purview at that point. And that, I think, is a good compromise. It's my opinion.
I guess I could get talked into 12. 7 seems like one a month. 7 seems extreme.
I think it should be less than that, because I think the people around all the stuff that's going on deserve more time off of that. They deserve as much time off as the other people deserve on. I mean, why would you say one or the other? Here's the other thing that that if I can put up, what John has on the screen there on the right side, third one down, if an activity exceeds 100 people during a 24-hour period. Well, let's take the guy with the winery down in Kennebec. He's not going to know that he's going to have 100 people there before there's 100 people there. So he's not going to do that, is he? And so we have to look at that also and keep that in mind as we make this decision, because that's an after-the-fact thing. I'm not exactly certain how to do that one, but that is something that needs to be considered also. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I throw in 2 cents? So what I'm hearing from you guys is that you'd like to have a process that had good due process, and your conditional use permit is your way to do that. Unfortunately, there is fees, in that for that permitting process. But then you can look at each situation, like Supervisor Hanson was mentioning here, individually. I think the event plan, that is supposed to be, prior or before the event is happening, because we're trying to really, notify our EMS and our local fire departments and stuff, hey, you've got an event going on there, so I'll leave it up to you guys, but I'm getting the idea that you're open to opening this up and at least having further conversation about reducing the number of days. The 15 days is completely arbitrary. You guys can make it 1, you can make it 2, whatever, and that you see fit for that type of use.
I guess if we could maybe be a little more specific too on what doesn't require a conditional use permit, or maybe set a different number for certain things. Like if this is strictly farmland and preservation education, maybe you're limited to 30 days before you need a CUP, or 20 before you need a CUP. And then if it's, events, I guess, non-educational events of any kind, we could discuss a lower number.
I hope you don't mind. Chair's going to jump in the conversation. Noise, I think, is the issue.
So you're thinking like a matrix of the different uses, and then within the matrix, we have different thresholds that would trip the CUP requirement.
Yeah.
It's kind of what you're thinking?
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think we just need further definition of what, for one, I think everybody knows I'm not a huge fan of CUPs anyway, but what trips that in there? And then secondary, maybe a process of how staff would look at the placement of Ag 2 in relation to what's around it. We always have that question of spot zoning and whatever, but maybe we look into that a little bit more detailed of what's around there.
And a lot of that falls back on the town comprehensive plans. They have a future land use, and we rely on that heavily to make our recommendations. So, that is a big factor we look at now. The other thing I'd like to maybe just share with the committee, the number of inquiries we've gotten for ag entertainment uses have dropped considerably. Since last fall, there was a new state law that was implemented that puts more of the burden on the property owner to secure liquor licenses. That went into effect, I believe, in November of last year. And that would require anybody owning property where they want to do wedding barns with alcohol sales, if you're going to have 5 or more of those events per year, the property owner is responsible for getting not only the liquor license, but the insurance that goes with that. So I had one call from a current ag entertainment wedding barn operator, and they said that's just been a serious challenge for them. The initial license fee is a $10,000 fee, then a yearly renewal fee, and then I didn't get a number on the insurance, but it seemed, based on my conversation, that was a significant expense. So once that law passed, myself and the zoning staff noticed a reduction in the number of inquiries. So I think that's kind of a hindrance.
Part of the discussion is property owner rights, and if you're changing zoning it's not truly spot zoning, but if you're changing zoning for one piece of property that's near other property, and it's going to affect either perception, and that's always hard to maintain and manage, but or in reality, the the way that those people really enjoy or use their property, then whose rights are more our responsibility, to serve, you know? And that becomes a question. And is it our obligation to rezone that property? And if the law, the way that we've written it, says that yes, we have to rezone that property because it's 15 days. So that becomes the challenge for me. And why do I think we should consider reducing that, is so that we have more of an opportunity to look at that and not be painting ourselves into the corner. So, Jerry.
Question for John. John, that liquor license thing, does that include BYOB events or not? Are people still free to bring whatever alcohol they want onto the site, onto the premises, you know?
I'm not sure about that. I'd have to get
It's
back to
liquor
you on that.
sales. It's liquor sales. It's selling of alcohol.
Right.
Possibly, yeah.
So I'm still not sure what we're asking John for. What do we want to see, and what will we consider as a committee? And again, we're looking at next term. We might be a different group of people here, so should we ask him to just wait until next term and revisit this?
I mean, I'm betting most of this committee will be, if not all, will be here again, just based on the fact that the nomination forms have turned in, I guess, put it that way. I don't think we'd be jumping the gun at all to, I guess, kind of give guidance now, just based on realities. I mean, let's be prudent about it. I'm open. I said I can be open to reducing, I guess, events. I don't think I'd be comfortable with as little as 7. That's more palatable, but cutting it in more than half is kind of seems, after the fact, seems a little bit imprudent to me. And then, but yeah, I like the matrix idea for stuff that would be easily approved. Why bother making them pay to go through a conditional use permit?
John has been taking notes up there, I noticed, quite comprehensively. So I think that we're talking about this now. Why don't we allow the staff to do some work on this and see what they can come up with and come back at another meeting? Yes, we may not all be here, but we may all be here too. And even if we're not all here, we have to keep moving on this. The world doesn't stop if we aren't here. So.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just ask the question. In the cover memo, we talked about some of the other zoning issues that have been brought up by various town officials, and then some of the encounters our staff has had regarding some of these other uses. And Jason, maybe you can put some context to this, but we've had some issues with sawmills, mixed uses, I believe, in some of the Amish settlements, part of the county, contractor storage yards, home-based businesses. I guess.
So I can provide some context here. In the last 6 months that I've been here, we've had a lot of common violations that keep reoccurring. It just doesn't seem like our ordinance fits in. And so while it's not our job to take and create policy, it is our job to let you know when our policies really don't align with a large portion of the community, or communities that we're seeing repeated violations for. And so about 3 weeks ago, we met with town officials from the town of Baldwin, O'Galley, Springfield, and Katy. And those officials brought to our attention several violations that the Amish have with sawmills, small general stores for basically their people, but also open to the public. And also the Amish community, generally they have 2 different dwellings, and that on their property. And so there becomes a lot of issues, and basically all 3 of those standards don't comply with our current ordinance. Now, normally, if it was just one property owner or one violation, and that you probably don't have a problem with your ordinance. But when we got a whole bunch of them, and that it just seemed like it was very repetitive. So we asked the towns, and that what are we going to do to take and get some oversight? And the towns were supportive of a zoning ordinance amendment. I'm just going to use sawmills for an example, where they would be able to have some conditions and some oversight, because this fall or winter has been really unique, you know, in that our road bans went on very early, but they had some semi-traffic on their town roads bringing in logs to these sawmills, and that didn't sit very well with the towns. So a week ago this past Monday, Mike Wozniak, our land use administrator, and myself went out to Freeman Miller's property, and that is in the town of O'Galley, and he had a general store, and he had a sawmill that our office shut down, and also another dwelling on the property. He was one of our violation sites. And we basically laid it out on the table, and we're like, hey, you know, that our town officials are really pushing, and we've got an ordinance, and we're going to enforce the ordinance. But there's other issues when it comes to the building code side that the Amish are having as well. And so I'm like, your whole community, we want to work with you as much as possible, but yet we've got our ordinances, and we need to take and work with our towns too. So had a good hour and a half long conversation. Basically at the end of the conversation, he's like, well, let me talk to some of the other members in our community, and we'll see about if we can get everybody together, building code officials included, town officials included, in one spot and meet about this. And so he did call me on Monday, and that I didn't answer, but so there's a little communication challenges there, but he did relay that he talked to the bishop and some other founding fathers, and they are willing to sit down and meet. I think there's potentially a good way to comply. I'm like, we're not going to pitch this at the county and the towns if you guys are going to continue to take and violate. We need to have a two-way partnership here and make sure that you guys are willing to comply, but if there's some common ground where we have a CUP that maybe has truck traffic conditions and sawdust maintenance or management conditions to it, maybe there is a win-win. For like a sawmill right now, that's only allowed with a conditional use in the industrial zoning. So you can see that a town's not going to want to take and have I-1 in the middle of their town just because of a sawmill. So it basically prohibits it from being able to be done. Contractor storage yard, we currently have that defined as only outside storage, but yet we've got a lot of contractors in that are trying to put their equipment inside, and that when they're at home, which I think, you know, doesn't have nearly the impact as outside storage would be, you know, but they don't really fit our ordinance either. So we're always having a hard time trying to fit them in. Common sense, it seems like, hey, if you can put it inside, out of sight, out of mind, that's a better thing. So that would be potentially travel trailers. We could maybe refine our, you know, provisions that what we allow, what we don't allow. And then home-based businesses, there's a lot of requirements in there about how much of the home-based business can be used for that particular type of use. So I don't know what the committee's take is, but if we're going to open it up for ag and that for the wedding barns and stuff, it might make sense to open up for the Chapter 15.
Yeah, if we're opening it, let's get it all in one shot. Yep.
I agree. I mean, I have a laundry list of issues that we have with Chapter 15 from our last go-around on there. But, yeah, we need to take a closer look at a bunch of those.
Are you thinking a work session, or do you want to bring something to the committee?
So, and that right now, it's actually a pretty nice deal because we basically got 2 months before we meet again here as a committee. So that gives us time to create a draft. And as soon as we have that draft done, we could maybe have a first review at the May meeting, and then you guys could determine whether or not you wanted to have another meeting on it. I would think that this would not be a comprehensive amendment. This would be only a minor amendment because we wouldn't be adding any zoning districts or classifications like Ag 1 or Ag 2, and that we're going to stay within the existing boundaries that we've got and just modify some of the performance provisions, definitions, and CUP requirements. So, yep.
I have two thoughts concerning the May meeting. It's going to be a huge meeting, and you will have not gotten any sleep by then.
I'll be fine.
Okay, so any other thoughts?
Okay.
All right, let's move on.
Get a draft.
Discussion on chapter 13, and that'll be Jason. Hang on, let's take a 2.5 minute break. Everybody just hang out. Three? No, there's 180 seconds. All right, we're taking a break. All right, we are back in session. Jason, what do you have for us? Chapter
All right,
15 or 13?
Again, Mr. Chair and members of the board, our staff have worked on an amendment to Chapter 13, land divisions. It's been a collaborative approach with our county survey staff over at Highway Building, our land use staff, our planning staff, everybody basically within community development has been able to review this document. And so there's numerous changes that are really just removing duplicate of text and we're also trying to clarify what the plat submittal would have. Right now, there's a lot of information that is included on the face of the plat. We've had several waivers here for road setbacks, and that we, basically it was an implication because we required too much information on the plat a while ago. So keeping the plat very simple and clean so that when it's filed with the Register of Deeds, we don't have to go back with all these waivers and amendments to the plat, but yet then also still retaining that information in the additional submittals, so the supporting documentation, if you will, when they complete the plat. So I'd like to just go through the main policy changes, and we're not advocating for these, but I'll kind of give just a short, brief reason why you might want to consider some of these changes. The first one is with our survey required. Right now, the ordinance references that if you keep your parcels over 35 acres in size, that you do not need a survey. And so somebody that owns 240s side by side could come in there, and maybe there's a farm field on that goes on both 40s. They could literally try to create a meets and bounds description to follow the wood line, and you might end up with something really, really jagged like this, and a meets and bounds that's a page long, because they don't need a survey, just because they keep both parcels over 35 acres, and so that provision doesn't come into effect a lot because you need both parcels to be over that amount. But this here would basically mean that any parcel that's being subdivided would require a certified survey map. And so the remnant would also be required. So if you had a 40-acre parcel and you chunk out 1 or 2, 2-acre lots off from it, you would have lot 1, lot 2, and then the remnant would be your lot 3 of the map. Now, usually in that, or 99% of the time, the surveyor's already got to go and find the other corners and that when they're splitting off those other parcels. So it's not like they're really having to do a lot of extra work. It's just that they're including it on the map, and then it creates a lot of easier processes down the road, because when ROD files it, it's lot 1 of CSM number blank, so you get like one sentence in that versus having a whole page. And when property analysis have to put it into the tax roll, it's very simple. When the assessors are dealing with it, when properties are being bought and sold, a very short abbreviated meets and bounds. So any questions on that one? Okay. The concept review is throughout the whole document. I would consider this a preliminary review for the preliminary plat or the preliminary plan. And so I'm not sure concept review is the correct wording. Our staff, and including Corey, would like to take and offer courtesy reviews, so if somebody's got a draft and they want to send it in and say, hey, is there going to be any issues with this? We're still open to that. I just don't know if we need to be as formal to have a preliminary review before the preliminary plan, before the final plan, so, and there's nothing in the statute that requires us to have that. So again, similar concept could still be offered, no fees attached, just a courtesy. So road provisions. So there was a lot of road provisions in the ordinance. There was a court case in Rock County that took and basically came out and said that public improvements are to be spec'd by the local municipality, so be the towns in our case. They're the ones that can require what the width of the road would be, how much pavement they want on it, any drainage easements, utility easements. What the county can require is more the stuff for the orderly layout. So in other words, we can say that a road has to be, platted, or maybe has to continue to the other property line for future road development so that it all connects. We just can't get into the weeds as far as what the specs are of those provisions. Now, if this amendment was to go into place, we would definitely want to do some outreach to make sure that the towns know that we're no longer reviewing those, and to make sure that they have their standards in place. There are some standard town road specs in Chapter 82, I believe, of the Wisconsin statutes that will really cover a lot of this. Just want to make sure that they would be aware of it. Again, this here is only the first review of this ordinance. This would still require a public hearing. We would have to file a petition with the county clerk. We could do a public hearing in May or June, and it could be to the county board if you wanted to in June or July, depending on how much review time you want. We just finished up the comprehensive plan update, and as part of the survey requirements of that plan update was like 90% of the residents of the county wanted to preserve the rural character of the county and preserve the agricultural around. And there's a lot of provisions in the conservation design that are very duplicative, and they maybe have a setback of 100 feet, but then right below it, they say that that 100-foot setback can be reduced by up to 50% if you meet this X, Y, and Z, and it's just a lot of gray area. So, being that the towns and their town comp plans designate so much of the land to be developed, maybe R2 zoning, conservation design is a good tool for the county to offer to preserve the rural character, but yet still meet the housing needs of the county. And so with the conservation design, there's a 25% density increase. You know, so if you had a parcel that you could really only put 8 houses on, and that in a conventional major plat, now you do conservation design, you're able to reduce the lot sizes down to a half acre, and you get 25% increase, or roughly 10 dwelling units out of that same parcel. We don't have many of these. I think there's only 1 or 2 in the whole county right now, because a developer looks at the ordinance is like, holy cow, this thing's like 10 pages long, you know? And I think the Center of Land Use Education, or UW Extension, probably came out with the current text that we've got, because it is very common amongst the counties. It was kind of standard, if you will. So the proposal has a lot of simplification in conservation design to try to promote conservation design within the county, if that's something that the committee wants to support. And one of the main things that they ran into a lot of problems with was the amount of open space requirement, going from 50%, we dropped that to 40%. It could even be less if you want. But basically, if you've got 100 acres, right now the ordinance would require 50 acres to remain open space. We would drop that to 40 acres of open space. We think it'll be more attainable, so. Supervisor Connor, did you have one on the last one with the road provisions? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess on both of these I do. On the road provision one of the concerns I get, being a former town board person, the town board towns have been very reliant on review for roads and construction and everything, and reliant on the county. And they go through the process for review with the county highway department, and most of them do have a spec, but by doing what you're talking about, it kind of makes me concerned that it's going to force them now to also hire in engineering services and everything to do reviews and have additional costs and additional layers. So right now, a lot of this, we rely for the road reviews and all this stuff to be done under our administrative fees and everything. It was incorporated in, and it was more streamlined because we're just dealing with the county to do this. And if we're taking the county out of this now and we're going to put all the burden onto the town that, hey, you're going to enforce your roads and how they're constructed and how they're done and the layouts, well, we're going to be pretty much pushing that they're going to have to hire in engineering services, and we're going to add another layer of cost onto developers and everything else in there. So I'm just thinking out loud here about, I realize the Rock County case, but is there a way that we can have a mutual agreement with the towns, or another way to do this so that we can avoid the legal side of it, but yet be able to do what we've been doing?
So that question has been asked, and unfortunately the towns cannot delegate their review authority to the county. And so that's where And that I'm not happy with the Rock County case either, but literally we would have no enforcement authority to say, hey, we want that to be a 23-foot blacktop pavement road versus the standard 22. We could not require that as a county. The town could. And so that's where our outreach needs to be very good, you know, that we can take the plan pages that we had to cut out. Here's all of our specs, you know, and we can take and give them to the town, you know, and then they can require the developer to show how they're going to meet it, you know. So I don't think they have to go as far as hiring outside services if they didn't want to. And really, this has been around since before 2018, and our office hasn't been reviewing it for the road specs. So it's just a kind of a cleanup thing. It's been more in the ordinance for a guidance document for towns and people to look back to just because it's one central location. But really, they should be going back to the statute of Chapter 82. So, yeah, Supervisor Anderson.
I guess I don't see, yeah, like you said, any reason why they couldn't use the guidance the county used to follow as far as their own standard. And then is there any reason the township couldn't, like, for example, I know we'd lose the fees, but the township couldn't hire the county to do the review to see if it meets their own standard, if that makes sense? As far as a recommendation, not ultimate authority, but a recommendation.
Could ask Heather on that, because I know that they can't just delegate their authority to us, but if the town contracts with us to do their review, are we then a contracted party like an engineer? So
Seems reasonable to me.
I mean, because then that's the town's decision to say these are the people doing the review for us, and they're explicitly making that decision. Or if we can't do the review for them as a county staff, they can hire us to, as far as the formal decision, they can hire us to give them a recommendation, and 99% of the time they just follow the recommendation probably.
I don't see a problem with that, but that doesn't change the fact that we still need to clean up this ordinance.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
we can definitely use that as part of our follow-up with them, you know, and in the memo is, hey, this is changing, and that maybe we offer a service similar to like what we do with the comp plans, and that we help the towns with amending their comp plans.
I'm sure the highway commissioner will have something to say about that as well.
Yeah, and that Robbie's guidance is, look at the statute. He said it's all spec'd out right there. That's what we should be following, but not saying that the statute answers every cul-de-sac width, and you know what I mean? So there is design criteria that would be helpful for the towns. So throughout the ordinance.
Then I'm just going to ask the second question while I
Okay.
get, so moving on to the conservation design. I'm a very big advocate for conservation design, as you know, talking with you in the past, but I think our biggest downfall with conservation design that we need to work on is how we're going to manage the wastewater management issue. Is that's where the downfall is. When they install these systems, it's the long-term management issue and how to do it. I don't believe it's a good practice to leave that to homeowners associations because they can fall apart. They don't necessarily plan them accordingly where they have sinking funds and things for replacement for the future. I think there has to be a way, and it's going to involve somehow either a municipality or another means that we have to do it. But if we really want to make this happen, first we have to resolve how we're going to take care of the wastewater management issue.
So now the way I read it right now is that a common system would not be required, and that it would be an option to have a common system, but if you had bigger lots that were suitable for their own private sanitaries, that they would be able to put them on there. And maybe you just want us to clarify that so that it's clear.
Yeah, because I think you need it, don't you need, in the state statute, is it 3/4 of an acre for if you're going to have a individual system?
There's no requirement as long as it meets setbacks. You could have a 1/4 acre lot and you could have a sewer on it, so.
Really? I misunderstood that.
The lot I live on is under a quarter acre, and it has its independent septic system.
Yep.
It's also probably grandfathered in, but you kind of, you're not going to stop if I needed to replace my septic system. Like, you can't really stop me from doing that, I guess. I don't think we should. And not just only personal experience. There are obviously other people in neighborhoods that have, each house has their own septic system, and it'd be kind of tough to, I guess, pull the rug out.
We'll go back to septics, a couple bullet points down here, so, because we've got some more. So, Mike Wozniak, our zoning administrator, or land use administrator, was involved in this draft. There was a lot of excess zoning administrator discretion wrote into the ordinance. He's all in favor. I'm not trying to rob Mike of his power. But unfortunately, that gray area all the time created, every time that our office gets some submittals, it's like, oh, what do we do? Do we apply it here? Do we apply it there? And there has been some internal policies that have been put out to staff and about what should be applied when and our goal is really to take and create a document that is, when it's on the website, any landowner, subdivider, surveyor can go out there and they can read the requirements, and it's very clear. This is what St. Croix County is going to require, and this is the process that we're going to have to do it. So that's the goal of that provision, the policy. You bet.
As far as the zoning administrator, he still has to make rulings that could be brought to BOA as a appeal. So we can't strip all of that away.
No, this is a lot of the fluff or the discretion. I've already talked about keeping the face of the plats clean, but just putting that in the additional information that's submitted with the plat. We clarified the contiguous buildable area. That's the main thing. So that's the area without the right-of-ways, without the steep slopes, the wetlands. That's the main portion that we're concerned about. What I mean by clarified is we defined what contiguous was, and that about having a connection strip between the two chunks. I think we ended up on like 16 feet, I think was what we said. It had to be a width to connect so that you don't have a 1 foot strip to connect. So that's what I mean by clarifying. There's several references in the ordinance where it almost implies like the county is going to enforce the easements, deed restrictions, covenants, and bylaws of some of these plats. And quite often we don't have any authority to do so. With the ones that we have authority to enforce are like conservation easements and a conservation design. So those provisions are all in there. So anything that St. Croix County would be a party of, we would still be an enforcer of. However, if there's a covenant that says your house has got to be hot pink, we're not going to send out our land use staff and tell somebody that they got to make their house hot pink. That would be up to the homeowners association and that to do that. So back to the septic side, currently every lot within St. Croix County, when it's subdivided, requires a soil test to be done on that lot to verify that it's suitable for a sanitary system. Okay, fine. The problem is that soil tests, back in the day were $350 or $400. It wasn't a big deal on the scheme of things. Now those are pushing $600 to $700. And so we're getting fairly large tracts of land that a farmer is buying, or somebody that just wants it for hunting land is buying, and they're saying, yeah, we don't really care to do that soil test. We don't want to absorb that cost. I have no intention on building on that piece of property. And so they're taking and calling it an outlot on the survey map, when in reality that parcel meets the minimum lot size requirements, it meets the contiguous buildable area, it meets everything in the ordinance, but it's being called that outlot just because they didn't want to pay for the soil test. And so we've also got existing parcels in the county that are maybe bulk of wetland, and they might not be able to meet the contiguous buildable area on that whole parcel. Do we really want them to call it an outlot, or do we want to let them have it as is? I don't know what the assessors do, but that's a question that kind of comes to my mind, because if we got a big parcel that's deemed as an outlot, we would probably be assessing it like it was an outlot and that they couldn't build any dwellings on that property or anything. So it's just not really good orderly development to be calling all these things outlots when typically an outlot is a parcel that doesn't meet the ordinance requirements. So maybe they don't meet the length to width because it's a road, it's a platted roadway, and it's only 66 feet wide, but it's 1,000 feet long, you know. Those are the outlots that are okay, and those are the outlots that we still want to continue to allow. It's just these bigger chunks just because of the soil test. So, but yet if we have parcels that are being split into 5 acres or less, or if they're part of a major plat, we know the intent of those parcels then is housing development. So we took in our suggesting in the ordinance here that those are the lots that we would require the soil test on. The ones that are, you know, smaller lots intended for housing more than likely. Any questions on that one? With that comes buyer beware, you know, and that when you buy a piece of property and it's 30 acres, you know, and if you want to build on there, you know, that somebody should be thinking, hey, I'm going to put it in the purchase order, but I'm going to put it in on contingent that it has a perk that'll work for a sewer system. So.
Is that something, if we make this change, we could notify, like, I don't know, all the, I guess, real estate licensees in the county or something, or that generally work in the county, that we probably have an email record of, or at least the major branches or whatever, just so that all of them are aware of the change.
I mean, we could.
We could get it.
But really, you know, from my own personal experience, nobody buys a lot without perk testing it first. I mean, you'd be crazy to do so. So buyer beware, but I mean, I think the buyers probably already are. I mean, before you're going to spend that kind of money.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think everywhere else you go, but it's just been past practice here that we maybe are trying to protect the buyer too much in that a little bit because, you know, as the time has came on, you know, and that we've changed septic system designs, what's allowable, you know, so I mean, times change and we don't know what the land is going to be either, you know, so somebody could go in there with a dozer and flatten it and it could make that soil test no longer valid too, you know, and we would have nothing, you know, to know about it, so. Right, so. Okay, there was some provisions in far as the landscape standards that were in conflict with chapter 15. So we just made consistency throughout the document with definitions and, like I said, various standards so that they were the same. Otherwise, it's confusing which one are you supposed to follow. Condense the ownership options for outlots and shared common open space. There was provisions in there to allow like a third-party conservation organization to own them. But of course, we had concerns about tax deed takebacks, property taxes, you know, who was going to follow through and make sure each party was doing everything that they should be. So the one third party that we would allow besides the developer and the county would be the town. So, and that is kind of how most of those public properties go. We updated the agencies, ordinance links, submittal requirements. There was several provisions throughout the ordinance that I would call just negative in nature. They were like they're really unnecessary. They were within the ordinance, like if you don't do this, we're gonna, you know, penalize you and use the enforcement provisions. Well, that, of course, because of it's an ordinance, it's implied. So we still have our enforcement section, and that's everything that's going to enforce the whole ordinance. So hopefully it's just more public friendly. So a big change, and it's not much of the text in the ordinance, but currently St. Croix County has required any public improvements to be installed before the final plat is approved and filed with the Register of Deeds office. currently our financial insurance, for doing that, we only required 50% down because we were holding that final plat approval. And this provision, I think, would be more developer friendly, but yet still cover the county's concerns, because the developer will have approval of the final plat, but yet the county will still retain 120% financial assurance of what the cost of the improvements are to make sure that they're implemented out there on site. So in other words, public improvements would come after final plat approval versus before. Any questions on that one? Yeah, Supervisor Coner.
Yeah, so in other words, if I'm putting in a development and I've got public improvements that I have to put in for roads or whatever it is, you're saying that if I got to spend $1 million for the road, now I've got to spend 2.2 million that I have to have cash.
Well, and that, so we're saying in the,
120%.
and that 1.2, so we would have to have financial assurance for 1.2, and that plus you'd have to build the road, but the financial
so
assurance
it'd be
could be in a
2.2
line of
million.
credit or whatever, you know, so.
So 2.2 million now
No,
that
you
I
need
have
a-
to have cash.
But what this really does is it takes the burden off from you, and let's say that the county changes the ordinance, or let's say staff move on and they have a different interpretation of the provisions, and now you went and you invested $1 million in that road, and now the requirements change, and that now you don't get your final plat approved, that's a big deal, you know, and versus what we're saying is, hey, your final plat's approved, you gotta have the financial assurance, because we got inflation costs, that's why it's 120%, because it could be up to 3 years later.
The $1 million project would require a $1.2 million performance bond. A performance bond costs 1 to 3% of the total project cost. I don't, last time I was pricing performance bonds, they were in the 1 to 3% range, but. Yeah.
The 120%, that is the maximum that we're able to go to, so, yep. But from what we've kind of talked with some of the developers already, you know, and that they were very supportive of this concept, so that they knew that, hey, the green light's there, I gotta take and spend the money, but I at least know that everything's gonna move forward.
I guess I don't see the need for the 120%. If you're gonna provide a bond or whatever it is, why would you need to be over 100%?
Inflation.
Are we gonna have public comment?
There'll be a public hearing on this, yep.
Are we gonna, should we consider having an open house where we invite public to come in and make comments on this one? These are some pretty big changes.
It's up to you, and that's kind of the purpose of the public hearing, you know, and we have ample time to provide notice right now, and we can even create a web page and put it out online, similar to the comp plan if you'd like, so.
Well, I'm
Well, this would
asking-
require a public hearing, wouldn't it?
It would require
Yeah.
public hearing, yep.
Right, I get that.
yeah.
Public hearing happens within, 4 minutes of actually taking the vote. And if we have an open house, it gives a lot more time for policymakers to consider what's being said. I know it's a lot more work for the staff. I appreciate that. I do.
We've already got quite a few hours in this, so, yep.
I get
Well,
it.
your action item could always be delayed to the following meeting. You don't have to vote right after the public hearing.
Noted. Noted. This is another case where we've got 2 builders on this committee, and both of them have put up a red flag on this one issue. The last thing that I want to see is to pass this and then have a quarter of the builders in St. Croix County come in here angry that we did this because we didn't tell them. I don't want anybody thinking we snuck something in. So I want to take every opportunity, that we can to make sure that we communicate this and get input.
How about if we take and send out the draft and that to the surveyors and developers and that we work with on a regular basis, and that's so that they are very well notified for the public hearing.
I think that's pretty good.
If we were to include realtors in that, I think that would be prudent.
We can try to find that list, and I can't guarantee that we'll hit every realtor and that, but we can at least maybe hit the branch office or something within the county, so, yep.
If you get a listing of the St. Croix Valley Builders Association, you can get a pretty decent listing of all of the main builders anyway from the area, and then also the Western Wisconsin Realtors Association, I think is the other one that you could get a pretty decent listing of everybody that would, and you may be able to just send it to them and they can disperse the information.
No, I need to ask the question, have we had any issues where without getting the financial insurance that we've ended up holding the bag? Has the county lost money by not getting insurance?
I don't know if the county has, but in my 28 years, I've seen it at least twice. I've seen it at least twice, where a developer has gone under before they finished the project, and we had to exercise their performance bond.
And remember that the county is kind of a third party on this too, because we'd be working with the towns on completing these projects.
Okay, so in asking for, increased communication, we're going to fill the room with a specific population who are going to object to this, and I know that too. I just want to make sure that we don't anger this population.
I don't know. So.
What about that development in New Richmond that was next to the turkeys that the county purchased and then sold to a developer? Was that an unfinished project?
It was unfinished. I don't know if the city ended up taking a hit on that. I know that the land came back to the county on tax abatement.
Yep. And we sold it for a nice price, but I think the developer really made out. But I think they had to finish some of the utilities in that.
I don't think so. I think they had everything right down to cable TV plugged into that.
Okay.
It was done.
Turnkey project, huh?
Yep, it was.
Yeah.
My understanding on that one was that the developer had invested, put in all the infrastructure, put in all the roads, storm sewer, everything was done. And, but was unaware that there was a huge fee that was due to the city for sewer and water access charges. And that put them under. It was in excess of $250,000 in fees that the city was looking for, and that put them over the top, that they couldn't get the funding or the financing to pay for the permits to get their final plat approval.
Yeah. I was just trying to think of a project in the county where the developer did go under, but maybe they'd finished the utilities of that one.
Yeah, and with the financial assurance, I know that's a huge increase from 50 to 120%, but that's a faster turnaround. There's provisions in the ordinance too that basically upon completion, that money is released back or that bond is released, and that it's not upon, right now, it kind of lingers on for many years afterwards where there can be like a partial release and stuff, and that we're just trying to keep it very simplified. But yet if we've got a development and they've already got the final plat recorded and we only got 50% financial assurance and they walk away from it, what are we going to do to take and make sure that stuff's put in? So that's why we increased it to over 100%.
I'd suggest to the committee we consider having a public hearing and then what would be a second reading, take the vote a month later and have discussion a month later. Sir.
This might sound crazy and it might not be possible, but I'm just throwing it out there. Is it possible to let the individual contractor choose which option they want to do, or do we have to set one standard?
I suppose it's possible, and that you could create it. It's not typically done how we're doing it right now. Typically, the financial assurance, the reason why there's financial assurance is to make sure that it's done because the final plat's already been recorded. So this is very unique how we've got it, and it's also delays the whole plating process, of course, because, and that you've got a preliminary that comes in, then they get their preliminary approval from staff. Now they gotta go spend that, $250,000, $1 million, whatever, build the road and everything. And now they're coming back for final plat approval. Well, what happens if the ordinance changed in there? Or what happens if staff say, yeah, no, sorry, it's not good enough. We don't want to do that anymore. That's.
So at what point do you ask for the financial assurance? At preliminary plat or at final plat approval then with the change?
Final plat approval.
Right, so they could get a preliminary plat, they can go put all the utilities in, then ask for final plat approval, and they would need no assurance because the utilities are already in. So crazy works.
Correct?
So are you saying what would streamline this? What would be better and still protect the interests of the taxpayers? At what point should we be doing it to make it easier for the contractor, for the developer?
Like it's proposed. Yep.
Okay.
And so final plat should be done. So in other words, we should go through all the approvals, get all of our permits up front, right? And then we should take and start construction, and the financial assurance is to make sure that that happens.
All right, continue.
Okay. The next one that we changed or was policy was we simplified the land disturbance section. This is one of the things that was part of our last agenda topic about the Chapter 15 amendments for filling and grading. We've got a lot of different provisions where maybe they got to go through, a 10-foot bank, and it's maybe 20 to 25% slope. Right now, anything over 25% would be prohibited by the ordinance. Now, that case out in the middle of a farm field or something where there's no erosion potential, that might be an allowable use, but if you got a, bluff along the St. Croix and you got 150 feet of elevation, that's 25% slope, that's a totally different thing. So this provision is kind of looking forward to what Chapter 15 amendments might look like, and that to try to simplify that process and create some performance standards so that it's not just a prohibited use, but that they have to follow proper erosion control, they have to make sure that it's stabilized, and so that, like I said, even some of the ditches on their back slope are over 25%, so it's just trying to put some context in there about the differences. Right now, the county's got two different length to width ratios. Right now, we specify parcels less than 10 acres at one and parcels greater than 10 acres at one. So we simplified it and we went to the bigger one so that it was less restrictive. And that is a 4-to-1. And then right now, because of the shape of lots can vary a bunch, there's like several pages of how to calculate what the width is. And basically, we tried to take and simplify it so that it's 3 measurements and it's the average of them. So you take the widest part, you take the narrowest part, and you take one in the average or in the middle, and then you put all those together, then take your width times 4, and if your average is less than whatever that be, so if it was 400, if it was 100 feet wide, you're good to go. So. Okay. One of the things that we don't do a lot of is developer agreements, but we left it in there just in case we need to use it someday down the road. But we did condense it down, simplified the wording, so no big changes though as far as what it actually is or what it can do. The land division ordinance is kind of unique. I've never heard of a waiver before. Typically, those are considered variances, and if you look at the criteria that a waiver was to be reviewed against, it's very similar to a variance: unnecessary hardship, physical property limitations, not contrary to public interest. So we removed the waiver provisions and we imported variance provisions so that those would go to the Board of Adjustment. So there's no case law on waivers. Center of Land Use and Education doesn't use waivers, So, I mean, really, you're asking for a variance to the standard. And then the current fee section is quite lengthy, so we reduced that and we simply reflected the committee's fee schedule that you approve as the fee schedule in the ordinance or for the ordinance.
Do you need the fee schedule in the ordinance, or could you reference a fee schedule outside of the ordinance so it'd be easier to update?
That's what we did, yep.
Okay.
And that is that we just referenced the fee schedule and that outside of the ordinance. So we removed all fees and kept it very simple in the ordinance so we don't have to amend the ordinance every time and just looked outside. Mm-hmm. Yep. And just so that's not a shock, and that when we go to public hearing with this, the current document's about 108 pages long, and it's almost cut in half directly. And that, so it's about 54 pages long, but really the policy changes have just been went over right here. So there's not a lot of policy. There's a lot of duplicate text in several sections. I think the conservation design stuff could be cut more. I mean, it's something I would encourage you to take and review because there's a lot of stuff about internal open space within the group clusters, and there's a lot of provisions there. And that might still scare developers away from using conservation design because it looks like a lot, but it's really not that hard to meet. So it's something to throw out there. I'd encourage you to review it and decide, you know, how attractive do we want to make conservation design within St. Croix County?
We can have a conversation on conservation design at a later time when it becomes a clearer subject, and I suggest we do make it a future agenda item or a workshop or something. And I'm saying that to avoid another 20-minute conversation because it's a very important topic. And I'm not making light of it. I think we need to delve into it and promote it. All right, anything else? Good. This morning when I woke up, I was really just dancing around because I knew I got to hear a financial report today. Anything?
Yeah, sorry to disappoint you. This is through February, so it's really too early in the year to identify financial trends or red flags. If you saw something you want me to answer, though, I'll be happy to. Otherwise, the numbers aren't big enough to worry about yet.
I should have invited my friend Judy Ochterhoff. She was good at this. All right. Moving on. Community Development Department update. Does everybody know that Jason had a baby the other day? Yeah. Named Clint.
So otherwise, I don't have anything else right now, Mr. Chair.
No, understood. Announcements and correspondence. West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Committee, well, that was the other day. That already happened. That was a great meeting, by the way. We held the meeting yesterday at Beaumass Farms, and Jason gave a phenomenal report on on farmland preservation, and they were very well received. And I want to make a public thanks to this Wald family and to Steve Schala, and just it was a great. It represented St. Croix County phenomenally at the regional planning. A request for future agenda items. Right. Wait until next term. Okay, the date of the next meeting is Thursday, April 18th.
No, it is not that date. So you will not have a meeting in April. Your next meeting will be in May. Because you'll be...
Thank you. You anticipated that.
Yes, I did, yeah.
Okay.
It's been on every agenda. Everyone's missed that.
Okay, so the date of the next meeting will be well,
as
we have an
determined by whoever
organizational
the
meeting.
organizer of the meeting is that's appointed.
Okay, we don't know when the next meeting is.
We don't
Stay
know
tuned.
nothing until
Right,
the new county board is constituted.
right. Okay, guys, stay tuned. Adjourn. Thank you.